Lehrman. I am 16 and a senior. So today we are going to be talking about my favorite topic, consent. So talking about consent is extremely important to me, in part because according to Corrine Winstead, probation officer for the 5th Judicial District, which is our district, the number of juvenile sex offenders have never been higher. Also, I know upwards of 30 people who have been assaulted or raped in their lifetimes. 30 people. I'm 16. That's ridiculous. I should know absolutely nobody who has had that experience. So today, again, talking about consent. Sexual assault is not an other people problem. It is our problem. It is happening in our district, in our schools, in our community right now. And the only way to fix that, I truly believe, is through consent education. So today, we have a guest speaker, Dr. Elizabeth Jeglic, who is going to teach us what we need to absolutely know. Because again, this is one of the only ways to truly stop this epidemic of sexual assault. So today, Dr. Jeglic is a licensed clinical psychologist, professor of psychology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York. She's a mother of 3, an author, and a publisher. Dr. Jeglic has published 3 books, including Protecting Your Child from Sexual Abuse, and over 100 journals and articles and book chapters on sexual violence prevention. She is here as a part of Mountain Youth's Eat Chat Parent Series. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Jeglic to the stage.
Thank you, Sapphira, for that lovely introduction, and thank you guys so much for having me here. It's both a privilege and an honor to come here and talk to you about this really important topic. I've spent the last 20 years of my life studying sexual violence prevention, and what we have learned is that sexual violence is a very common problem. Upwards of 25% of women and 10% of men will experience unwanted sexual experience in their lifetime. So how can we prevent that from happening? One of the things that we're learning about is that there's a problem with consent. And so there are 2 things that have happened. One is that we have changed the laws around consent, and we'll be talking about those. And 2 is that we are now teaching young people about consent and what consent is, because we found that a lot of people were confused. A lot of sexual abuse is starting in adolescence, in your age groups. And so the more that you guys know, the more that we're going to prevent this from happening. So thank you so much for being here. So what do you think about when you hear the word consent? What does that mean to you? Yes. Yeah. Yes. Both parties, agreement, yes. And here we are talking specifically about consent for sexual behavior. So let's say we have an alien that's come down to Earth and they don't know anything about consent, and you're tasked with explaining this to them. What would you tell them? What does consent mean? Yes. Agreement between 2 parties, that's right. How would you tell them to ask for it? Politely? Would you tell them to do it verbally or non-verbally? Verbally, right. Good, so you guys already know some stuff. I know you've had some prep. So, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, as you've told me very kindly, consent is permission for something to happen or agreement to do something. So you're right there. The next part is our legal definition of consent here in Colorado. Consent means cooperation in act or attitude pursuant to an exercise of free will and with knowledge of the nature of the act. A current or previous relationship shall not be sufficient to constitute consent. Submission under the influence of fear shall not constitute consent. So that's a lot of really technical legal language. So let's break that down a little bit, because if you do not follow this, you can be charged with sexual assault. So consent means cooperation. That means both parties need to agree. A current or previous relationship is not sufficient to constitute consent. That means that if you used to date the person and they gave consent then, that doesn't mean they're still giving consent today. If they said yes 3 days ago, that doesn't mean they're saying yes today. And the last part is also really important. The influence of fear shall not constitute consent. What do you think that means? You're my star pupil over here. Yes, not forcing somebody to do something they don't want to do. Not bully them. That's called sexual coercion, and that can also be sexual assault. So this is the legal definition. I want you to keep that in mind. So how many of you have seen the consent and tea video? A few of you? Great. How many of you have talked about consent before? Half of you. How many have talked about consent at home with your parents? A few of you? So this is a really important topic, and I hope this is not the only time that you'll be talking about it. I want this topic to be a topic of conversation with you and your friends, and I want you to show your parents this video. It's available for free on YouTube, and we'll talk about it after we finish watching.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea, thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you can make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no thank you, then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes please, that's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. We should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it, going, but you wanted tea last week. Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat, going, but you wanted tea last night. But if you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
So that's a great video, and I encourage you to watch it again and also to share it with your parents so you guys can talk about it more. So what is that video about? Is that video about tea? Yes? Well, then we completely missed the point there. So what are some of the take-home? This message is about consensual relationships and sexual relationships. So what are some of the messages that this video told us? Yes? Yes, so if somebody is unconscious, even if they said yes before, we cannot engage in sexual relations with them. What else have we learned from this video? What if somebody is not enthusiastic about having tea or having a sexual relationship? Do we make them? No. Very good. Can somebody change their mind? Yes, absolutely. Good. And we'll talk about some of those things here. So why is consent so important? 1 in 5 females and 1 in 7 males who experience sexual abuse from a dating partner first experienced that abuse in a dating relationship between the ages of 11 and 17. How many of you in this room are between the ages of 11 and 17? So this directly applies to you. More than half of all women who have been sexually abused in their lifetime were abused before the age of 18. So this is salient. This is going on now in your lives and your dating relationships. So we want to teach you how to be safe and how to keep your partners safe. So why is consent so important? Teenage girls who experience dating violence are more likely to abuse substances, have more suicide attempts, have more eating disorders, and engage in more risky sexual behaviors. So we absolutely do not want those consequences to happen to our friends, our family, our people that we know in our community. So sexual violence, as I told you, is a really big problem, especially among young people in dating relationships, because teens are not clear on what consent means and how to ask for it. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So how do you practice consent in your relationships? So this is a nice infographic. In case you can't remember, consent is like fries. Freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. So we're going to go through each one of those. Consent is freely given. So this is where we don't force people who don't want tea to have tea. It is never, ever okay to pressure somebody in any kind of sexual activity. If somebody says no, don't badger them into it, bully them into it, keep asking them, even if it's polite. If they say no, their answer is no. And that can be verbal or nonverbal. Somebody might not say no outright, they might just kind of push you away. You need to be careful of nonverbal signals as well. If somebody repeatedly says no, don't ignore them and don't continue to pressure them. If somebody is doing that to you, make yourself clear. It is never your fault, but you are making me uncomfortable. I don't want to do this. Stop, please, and get out of the situation. But for the person who is doing this, I need you to listen to those words, and you have to hear what the person is saying to you, and you need to respect their words. Consent is reversible. You can change your mind, and that is okay. That is like our tea video. You can say yes, and then when the tea comes, you can change your mind. That is perfectly all right. You can even say no, even if you originally said yes. You can say no at any point during the course of your sexual encounter. You and your partner always have a right to change your minds. So you want to also check in. Just because somebody says yes, does that mean they say yes for the whole encounter? No. You want to check in with them. Just because they said yes to one thing doesn't say they said yes to kissing, doesn't mean they said yes to hugging or something else. So you have to check in with them. Do you feel safe? Do you feel pressure? Check in with yourself. If you do not feel good, you also need to tell your partner to stop. If you don't feel safe in an interaction, you need to tell your partner to say no. Your partner needs to listen to you and respect your words. If they are not respecting your words and they continue, you need to get out of that situation and you need to get help. Consent is informed, which means it is honest. You need to tell your partner if this is something that you do not want to do. Your partner also has to be honest with you. Both parties have to know what they are getting into. One of the things that we're hearing about now more and more is something called stealthing, when somebody agrees to engage in sexual relations that is protected, and then one party takes off the protection before it happens. That is sexual abuse. That is not cool. If somebody is under the influence of alcohol and drugs, they cannot give consent. How many of you carry a breathalyzer around with you? Nobody, right? So you do not know if somebody is drinking alcohol, whether they are drunk or not. So my advice to you is that if you are with somebody who is drinking or using drugs, do not engage in sexual relations because they cannot give consent. Also, being drunk or high is not an excuse to get you off the hook. I'm involved in a case right now where the man cannot remember anything, but he sexually abused a woman when he was drunk, and he is now being charged with sexual abuse. So just because you are drunk does not mean that you are not responsible for your behavior, because you are. Okay, I have another little video for you, because consent is enthusiastic. So I'll explain what that, this video will explain what that means.
Excited about sex? Great. With another person, right? Cool. Now you just need enthusiastic consent. Enthusiastic consent means being really into it, not just going along with it. Yeah, I know you're very enthusiastic, but I met the other person. You might be really excited about sex, but the other person isn't. Oh, you're thinking you can get them to say yes anyway? Ah. You'd ask them again? You'd sulk until they say yeah. Call them names and try to make them feel bad for saying no. Stop being affectionate until they give in. Get angry with them. Ask them again and again. That's being creepy and manipulative. There are lots of reasons why people don't feel comfortable saying what they really want. If you pressure them, you're making it harder for them to say they don't want to have sex. And no one should have to have sex when they don't want to just because they didn't feel up to saying no. It can be really devastating to be pressured into an intimate relationship that a person's not ready for. You don't want to harm anyone, right? You want to have fun. So you need to be able to tell if someone is enthusiastic. Let's do a quick test. Is this person enthusiastically consenting? Great answer. But you still need to be sure what they're enthusiastic about. How about this person? No? That's just someone vaguely smiling. Smiling is not consent. Or how about this person? They sound pretty reluctant. That's not enthusiastic consent. A lot of behavior is ambiguous and context matters. If you're not sure, you need to ask. Remember, really, really wanting someone to be enthusiastic can make you miss the signs that they're not. So look carefully. It's your job to make it clear that it's fine for them to say no, not to make it harder for them. And if you think your partner might be reluctant, then don't have sex. They might prefer snuggling or kissing. Enthusiastic consent is hot. Pressuring your partner is not. And in some cases, it's criminal. Got the difference? Good. Go find an enthusiastic partner.
That's another cute video that I encourage you to watch again or share. That's also available on YouTube. So the last thing, consent is specific. Thank you. Consent is specific. Just because you've said yes to one behavior doesn't mean you've given consent to others. And that's why it's really important throughout your encounter with your partner that you check in and make sure that even if they said yes at first, they're still okay with the next thing you're going to do. So how do you ask for consent? Should we use words or body language? Yes. According to the legal definition, you can still use body language. However, I would always strongly encourage you to use words. Why is that? Body language can be misinterpreted, right? You can misunderstand what is going on. Always use your words. So, do you want to? Would it be okay with you are you comfortable with this? How do you feel about this? Do you like this? What are you comfortable with? What do you like? So you need to make sure that you are communicating throughout with your partner. Always use verbal consent. Nonverbal communication can lead to misunderstandings. And if the person, even if the person says yes, if they feel uptight, if they're pushing you away, you need to ask them about that and take that into account. And probably that means they don't want to, even if their words are saying yes, their body is telling you no, and you have to listen to that. It's always better to err on the side of caution. So if the partner is pulling away and if they don't seem relaxed, that probably means they don't want to do what you're doing with them. Does that make sense? Got it. So how many of you are planning on going to university here in Colorado? Bunch of you? So Colorado is an affirmative consent state. There are about 10 states, including Colorado, that require students on those campuses to practice affirmative consent. The other ones are mostly on the coasts like California, New York, Washington. That means yes, not just that you have to say no, which is the legal definition of consent. But on college campuses, you can be charged with sexual assault if you do not have yes equals yes. So according to the University of Colorado, this means that in order for consensual sexual activity to occur, it has to be clear, knowing, and voluntary. You need to get a yes from the person. It can include words or actions, but I would always strongly caution you to use words that create mutually understandable, which means that you both understand what's going to happen, clear permission, meaning that you both agree, that gives acceptance that you're going to agree to do something, of the conditions of the sexual activity, what's going to happen, and the willingness to engage in that sexual activity. So keep in mind that you want to always make sure that you are getting that yes from your partner before you are proceeding. And if you have to listen to their words and their body language. How many of you have cell phones? Most of you? How many of you have heard of the term sexting before? Okay. This is another big problem that we're seeing around high schools. So sexting is sending sexually explicit messages or photos via an electronic device. With young people, we're seeing it mostly on your cell phones. Mostly photos and videos, but it can also be text messages that discuss or propose sex acts. So why are you guys doing this? Well, we did a study where we asked you, why are you doing this? So basically, this is the way that young people flirt. A lot of you are sending messages containing sexual content and sexual pictures to one another to flirt with each other or to show commitment in your relationships. Is everybody listening? This is important stuff. Some of you are sending it as a joke or to give somebody a shock by sending like a picture of a naked penis. It's all very funny, right? But that can be problematic. And you need to listen to this because we are seeing kids being charged as sex offenders because they are sending sexts. So what happens if you send somebody a sext? Even if it's your boyfriend or somebody that you care about, it can go viral. Even if that person is somebody that you know is going to keep your sex confidential, that person somebody might access their phone, like a brother or sister or a friend. They might forward that picture to themselves, and then the whole school, before you know it, has a picture of you. That can lead to very serious negative consequences. Kids have even killed themselves after photos have gone viral, so we don't want that to happen. Many teens believe that their partner or the person they send it to is going to keep it a secret, but then it gets shared and there are a lot of consequences. Once it's out there, you cannot get it back. It gets posted on websites and you cannot take it down. Also, when a very serious and very realistic thing that can happen is that you can get charged with possession of child pornography, which is a sexual offense. You can be charged as a sex offender and get put on the sex offender registry. They do not care that you are both teenagers and this is a consensual relationship. While in Colorado, it's not considered a sex crime, it's a misdemeanor. Other states consider it to be a sex crime. However, there is a case right now pending in Colorado where a young person, a teenager, forced a girl to send him a naked picture of herself, and he is being charged as a juvenile sex offender. So make sure that you do not send naked pictures of yourself or others. So even if you use an app that says it will delete your picture when you send it, that doesn't mean it is deleted. There are traces. Also, people take screenshots. I have seen that happen time and time again, so do not trust those apps. Once it's out there, you cannot take it back. Always, before you send something, if somebody asks you to send a picture of yourself, your boyfriend, somebody is coercing you, think before you do that. Because think about what it would look like if other people that you don't know would see that picture of you. And if somebody sends you something inappropriate, if you get a picture of a penis or something naked, you want to delete that immediately. I would also advise that you tell your parents so that they can talk to the parent of the child that sent it to you so that they do not get in trouble. We do not want any negative consequences. So always problem solve. So, any questions about any of the stuff that we talked about today? I know you've been talking about this in your classes, but this is important stuff. Yes? The maximum charge, like how many years can you get in prison? Well, it depends. If you're charged as a juvenile, it's probably 1 or 2 years. However, sometimes juveniles, depending on the seriousness of a crime, can be charged as an adult, and that can be, upwards of 20 years. We are getting more and more punitive in our country regarding sexual offense crimes. Even if you are young people, that doesn't excuse people anymore. We have people who are urinating in public who are being charged with sex offenses. So, we laugh about this, but this is really serious, and the consequences to those who've experienced sexual abuse are severe and long-lasting. So it's really important that we all talk about it, we understand it, and that we are on the same page. Any other questions? All right, well, I hope that you guys go forth and practice consent in your relationship. Thank you so much.